Lakes Road at Bulladoola. They've got mites in them. The ones he's got around Newcastle had mites in them. He took a load to Trangie. They killed that. I don't know. Well, they said there was no mites in them, but you don't know in a day. How do you know there's no mites in them in a day? They just killed them on sus, I suppose. Out of many, he's got 600 hives. He took these to Narrabri, and they've got mites in them there.
He's done a good job, hasn't
he? Yes. He must be blind. And he went to the Congress, and I talked to him at the Congress, and he wanted people trained. He's going to bring overseas staff in. That's true. He did. That's true. And it's been to Jerry's Plains and Denman. Now, I'm not sure about Jerry's Plains, Denman 1, but they're saying they're all sort of partly related. The ABA club at Hunter Valley's got mites in both their apiaries. But they were within range of where the epicentre was, but not close, but in flight by hopping to get to their apiary, right? So, there's probably 100 beekeepers in that area that have now found mites in their bees, or DPI's found mites in their bees. So they've got zones of 10 kilometres where they're talking about eradicating all the bees. So passing around a permit somewhere here. So there's been a permit issued to use fipronil to kill bees. So fipronil is a chemical that's used to kill small hive beetle. So fipronil is a chemical you can do the right dose rate, and by calculation within 500 metres you can get that, a bee can pick that chemical up and take it back to its hive and not die. So it takes the chemical back to the hive. So the permit I'm passing around says, you put sugar syrup out, you boil up beeswax, we've probably done it here, attracts bees, you put out sugar syrup, the bees will come to the sugar syrup as a sweetener, and you feed that for 7 days without any chemicals in it. That, in theory, attracts all the bees that are in that area, and they come there, and by doing it for 7 days, you might have 1,000, 2,000 bees coming to it. You only put the trap out for an hour. It's got to be protected so other non-target insects go to it, because other insects will go to swamp substances, so will birds. And then you put fipronil in it, and they're going to be every 500 metres apart. And if it's a 10 kilometre circle, that's 400 bait stations you've got to put up. And then you do that for a week, and then you have a break, and then you do it again, and hopefully that'll wipe out all the many bees that weren't found and all the feral bees. And then there's a monitoring system. How do you think you'd be able to monitor if there's no bees in an area?
All the flowers die.
Very good, mate. No, they don't. There's no almonds. We almost be asleep. So you look at the flowers. If there's no bees on the flowers or the blossom, it means there's probably no bees in the area. If there is,
You weren't successful.
I'll come back to the sugar, wouldn't I?
no, you finished that there.
But you could reintroduce it.
No, you just boil off honey. So you just boil up honey and wax. You get them to come to normal syrup. You put dots on them. They fly 25 kilometres an hour. We know how far the hive is away by the time it takes them to come back with the dots on. And if you put different coloured dots, if they all come back at the same time, they're all from the same hive. And then you just find them. That's not difficult to do. That's what I'd be doing. Or you could poison them, yeah, sure. So if you catch them with flowers and reorientate them, they'll go back to their hive. If you try and follow them from flower to flower, it's when they're full they go home, right? So that's how you do that. So it's eradication zone 10 Ks. We're talking about killing every bee in 10 Ks. Good luck. Then they've got a surveillance area where they're going to carry out surveillance, and hopefully they'll use pest strips, because that's the best way to know if there's mites in a hive. You can't find one hive very easily, as I've demonstrated. Then there's a notification zone where you notify, everyone's supposed to have notified DPI if they're in 50 kilometres of that zone. Doesn't come to here. And And then there's a general zone where you can't move bees, and you've all got those emails on that, you go to them. So how long do mites live? That's not in that PowerPoint. So in summer, they live 2 to 3 months. Female mites live 2 to 3 months in summer, and they live 5 to 6 months in winter. So they live longer in winter because they're not working and laying eggs. They're just sitting on bees and they feed on the fat of the bees. So I've gone through the reproduction. I've done all that. So why would strong hives like to have more mites in than weaker hives? Once they get into an apiary. Okay, so there's more brood. There's more drone brood.
They rob the weak hives.
Well, robbing's a way that can travel too, which I put on that other slide, into your apiary. So if bees come and rob your apiary, that can happen. And yeah, also, strong hives have got more drone brood. They prefer drone brood. So it's like all diseases. The strongest hives are often the first ones you find something in, right? So the first mite, is more likely to arrive at your strongest hive than your weakest hive. But then it'll become the weakest hive, over time. Now, in an apiary, and we've seen this with small hive beetle, you get a bigger concentration in some hives than other hives. And the same thing happens with mites. So you might have a hive, there's not many mites in it, and another hive there'll be a lot of mites in it for some reason. Now, whether they haven't got good grooming behaviour or resistance, that could explain why some hives have more than others. But I've been fortunate enough to see Varroa in several overseas countries because I've been able to travel. So it's not as I haven't seen them, but I haven't seen any here. I haven't moved to Newcastle.
Bruce, how do the mites actually feed off the bees then? If you say
they feed off the fat of the bee.
how do they get through the?
They got tongue. They pierce the.
They pierce the
Yeah.
the
Cutie.
Cuticles
Yeah,
and
to
get
get
through
food.
that way.
Yeah.
Doesn't that irritate the bees to make them want to get rid of them off them, or are they so?
Yeah, but they're often in such difficult positions, aren't they?
Oh, so
Like,
they
how do
don't
you get
all-
your leg round the back of your thorax to get a
No,
bite?
they're not. So what we're saying is,
You can on the abdomen, but you can't on the back of the
So
thorax.
it's a lack of grooming then. If they all groomed each other.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. Yeah, you'd be right. Yeah.
Need to educate them with grooming.
Yeah.
Do they have a preference whether they're on the top side of the bee or the underside?
No, they're often not. They're more on the underside, right? From what I've seen overseas, but the video that Lamorna gave, that tells the hive they're on the top, but they're more on the bottom. And they get where there's 4 glands on each side of the bee's abdomen where they secrete wax, and they hide in there. And they're often between the thorax and the abdomen. They hide there. They're not easy to find.
So observing the hive from the outsides.
It helps, yeah. I think you're more likely to see deformed bees, right? Because the bees keep the deformed bees, and you think, hell, that bee shouldn't be like that. That's a trigger. If it's got to that stage. Yeah. So there's a thing called Varroa sensitive hygienic behaviour. So some bees with their antenna, they use their antenna to sense things, right? So they can stick their antenna on a capped cell and tell if something's wrong. So bees with that ability are ones that are selected to try and control Varroa. So a bee goes, sticks its antenna and finds something wrong with the cell, and then there's 3 other jobs that the bees have got to be able to do. So once they do that, they've got to have a bee then that'll uncap and look in the cell, and once it looks in the cell, if it sees a Varroa or senses the Varroa there, there's other bees will make the hole bigger, and then there's a 3rd lot of bees that'll throw that out, so it can't hatch.
I'll take the pupa out.
Right, so it's called Varroa sensitive hygienic behaviour. And the Dean Chapman, the Ween Bee Foundation that is looking at, she tells me, and I've never seen it, that bees that cap cells, and if they think there's something wrong, they'll uncap a cell and have a look at it and circle it back up again. I've never seen that. But you can see the fault in the cap. So she's been doing that for a couple of months. I don't know if she's found anything in those bees, if they've got any of those characteristics, but that's relevant to this type of thing. So if you're going to breed bees for resistance to Varroa, you need bees with that characteristic. They sense something wrong with cap cell, because the mites in their cap cell breeding, uncap it, other bees make the hole bigger to get the larva out, and then others yank it out. And the other characteristic is, grooming. So some bees groom a lot more than others. So if you've got bees that have got good grooming, can sense that something in a cell that's not right, pull it out, throw it out, the mite can't complete its life cycle. So that's how they breed for, bee resistance to Varroa. But also viruses have got a big part to play. We don't have deformed wing virus unless these mites brought it in, which they could have done. We don't know yet. That'll help. Talk about viruses. Okay. So has anyone got any questions? There's no need to panic at this stage, but we need to know where the mites are and how far they've spread, and that will determine what DPI will do. They're doing a really good job. And if it's everywhere, they've got not much hope of controlling it. It's going to be very difficult now because where this guy's moved, never reported mites. I don't believe he could have not seen them because they will get 60 mites on a frame. That's a lot. He employed labour, why didn't the labour see it if he didn't see it? He's done a lot of damage. He's been in the almonds last year in Victoria. And there's been a lot of nukes sold out of Newcastle. There's a lot of keen beekeepers up there that are sideliners that were sacked, when BHP closed. They got a lot of money. I did a lot of training, the people that left BHP in beekeeping. Some of them have set up hobby businesses. Hopefully they're honest as to where they send stuff to. The fact that it's been there for so long, is a real concern, I would have thought. If it had come in the port, we got it there with those small few hives, found it nowhere else, you'd have a real good chance of eradicating it. A real good chance. And people simply no beekeeper found it. Not one beekeeper reported it. It was the DPI, who opened the port surveillance hives, that actually reported it. So
I rang the DPI to ask them whether the rumour that I'd heard that they were going to allow permits, because all of New South Wales is under that.
No move order.
They are considering issuing permits for people to move hives for pollination. That I rang the DPI and they said that.
Well, they're talking about doing that on the 20th. They're talking about doing that on the 24th.
I rang them.
There's got to be a proper survey done, and the only way, in my view, is to do a proper survey is to get strips out, give them to responsible people, put them in their hives, put sticky paper in their hives, and find out what they find out.
But they're talking about people that take their hives for pollination.
Yeah, I know that. I know that. Yes. People have got to live.
Well, if this is
But they've got to do the survey first, really, properly.
I understand you saying if some people's business is their livelihood, right? So if this is as important as it could be, when conversation to those people that not move their hives for 12 months, they do their surveys and know exactly where the hives are, rather than consider.
I agree. I don't disagree with that. But the quicker, I've had a phone call because I'm a member of the NSWAA, right? So everyone, the DPI asked the NSWAA, which is, anyone can join it, but it's a commercial group also, and there's one branch in Clutton City, a branch in Sydney, they call them branches, we call them clubs. I wanted 4 people, to do some survey. I've heard nothing. So I can get 3 other people, and we can go and do surveys, but we've got to be asked and got to have the equipment to be able to do it and the authority to be able to do it. it's a massive job, it's gonna take time. They shouldn't make any decisions for a while yet. And if they get these pest strips, and they've got it for Ecrotec, I talked to the bloke at Ecrotec the other night. Now whether they're here, some say they're here, some say they're not, I don't know. But once they're here, the smart thing would be to get, into some hives and just see, is it in Sydney, isn't it in Sydney, where is it? And then they can make a decision, about allowing people to carry on their business.
Yeah.
Like there might not have been anyone near Cobar or Broken Hill or where, I don't know, we don't know. We don't know where hives went to.
Yeah.
And apparently, the registration, there were so many unregistered beekeepers, the DBI website broke down, people trying to register their hives. And we've always said, people aren't registered, and they say, oh no, there's plenty registered. So it's a compensation fund, right? So the federal government, the state government put up $18 million, $18 million, as a compensation fund. How that's going to be distributed, who knows? If a hive's destroyed, what it's worth. There's no need to destroy boxes and frames and lids, but I understand they are. But there's absolutely no need to do that.
I still think, if you're saying there's so much inaction at the moment as far as getting out there, why they're even considering.
No, there's a lot of action, but you've got to have the right tools to get the right action. That's my view. That you need to get permission. There's only an emergency permit for the use of miticide strips in Australia. I can't use it, no one else can use it, right? But in this situation, my view is the best survey is to put strips in hives, leave them in overnight or for 2 days, get the sticky paper back, check. That gets to every bee in the hive. Doing Mickey Mouse sugar shaker and alcohol wash is going to find heavy infections, but it's not going to find light infections. That clear to everyone?
Yeah, but can I ask you one question about, you have to excuse my lack of knowledge.
No, that's what we're here for. That's what we're here for.
So what about, why Asian hives, if they can handle Varroa?
Because they're such good groomers.
Yeah, but why don't people use them to produce honey?
They do. Not here, right? So we've got the Java strain. Okay. So, accidentally, Apis cerana got here. It was an accident that they got here on the ship.
So they're just not making much honey.
The Java strain is not an efficient strain to produce honey. I think the 7 strains of Apis cerana, the ones here, will have a colony in a letterbox and they'll swarm 6 or 7 times a year, and they're not efficient at having colonies the size of Apis mellifera. If you go to China, as I've gone, and to Japan, they farm Apis cerana for honey production. They're a different strain, they're still Asian honeybees, and they put them in frames, the cells are smaller, the drone caps have got holes in them, and people farm that race of bees in that part of the world. But the ones we've got here, don't produce any honey. They're more interested in brooding, swarming. And they're very nervous. I went to Thailand, you touch a hive in Thailand, they piss off if they're Apis cerana. You think the hive, as soon as you touch them, they go. They're very nervous.
Is there any way that we can petition to have those strips brought in?
Oh no, they're in. Well, they've ordered 80,000 now. I'm not in the department. I only got friends that can tell me things, and I don't really know what they're going to do with them. But they've ordered 80,000.
When will they be available?
They'll only be available if they declare Varroa endemic, right? If they don't declare Varroa endemic, they won't be available. There's an emergency permit that's been issued to bring them in to assess the spread of the outbreak at this stage.
So you're saying that you need those strips to find out the extent of the
That's my personal view, yes.
But they're not letting them come out so that you can use them to test that area, you've got to wait till everything's completely stuffed before you can actually get the strips to use them.
Yep, that's live.
Is that right?
No, well, hopefully they're gonna do that, I don't know. I know it's a proven fact, they wanted 80,000 Recrotect, because on Tuesday night, last Tuesday, the RAS had, it's been 200 years since the RAS was formed, they had a big celebration. I was lucky enough to be invited to it. The bloke from Recrotect was there, I talked to him, the minister's advisor was there, I talked to him. So I've got confirmation they've definitely ordered 80,000 strips. Now, what they're going to do with them, I've no idea. That's deep.
So,
Thank you.
people in the Shire who live in the Shire, and
Yes.
we've got our own backyard.
Yes.
We can't get that stuff to actually check. our
No,
own-
no,
our
there's
own-
no permit.
our-
No. You can do, sugar shake, alcohol wash, put screen bottoms on, and use your thing.
Start ready from.
Well, yeah, but we don't want to get, if you use chemicals the wrong way, you can get it into honey. We don't want that to happen. They don't want that to happen.
So what we should be really going, I suspect, should we all be having these screen bottoms, which is what the,
Yeah,
just like the same as the,
yeah.
iBK.
You've got, like someone should stick is the coffin hive going again or not?
Yeah.
It is, right. Okay, so the coffin hive's going again, it's got a full screen bottom. So, next few days, when on Thursday, it's Thursday today. Anyway, at some stage, someone should get some white cardboard,
Or sticky paper.
laminated cardboard, stick underneath it, and then have a look the next week and see what's there.
So, but it's how they're testing for mites, how they actually perform, where they use sugar shake thing, or they?
I think that they're doing alcohol washes. Yeah. Which is a bit more effective because if you put, liquid in something, everything floats off. Whereas you put sugar in, and we can see some of those sugar shake bottles everyone's using, there's still some there. So if there's one mite, it could stay in the bottle. It depends on it coming out. Yeah.
So they've got a big problem really in finding the things anyway.
But it took time to get the strips.
Yeah.
Like they've done.
True.
They're doing a good job. But there's a limited number of people, there's a limited amount of time, there's so many different views. I'm just giving my view, and God knows what other views they got, I don't know. But to me, that is the most effective way of doing it. That's what we've done. I've been retired 16 years. 16 years ago, we used strips in all the Port Surveillance hives. Beekeepers qualified to use them, they did it. Bob Perkins is one of them, used to be life member here. And that's what was always done, but we didn't want it to go to the general beekeepers because they can pick up chemicals in the honey. We don't want that to happen. Now, there's no risk with eating honey if there's mites in your hive. I want to make that quite clear. There's no risk. But the mites don't get into honey. They get in honey they drown. Right? So you're not going to spread them with honey. You're not going to spread them with second-hand material, provided there's been no bees in it for 5 days.
These lot might ask questions.
I've only got 2 revisions straight ahead.
Yeah, you have.
I should put the orange beanie on. I propose that we've now got the ability to go and open our own hives and actually take honey off them, but there are restrictions, and I'm sure you've all been sent the emails about you can only go to 1 apiary and you can only use 1 load at a time and stuff like that. The almond industry is really driving the changes that are being asked for in New South Wales, and I just got some figures from the Contest to give you an idea about the strength of the almond industry. 20 years ago, in 2020, there were 3,500 hectares of almonds. 3,500 altogether. There are now 58,000. So 20 years later, we've had more than 20 times the amount of almonds all planted, and that's what's driving it. The industry itself is worth 1.63 billion. And it's not just the almond industry that's pushing for the movement. And you can understand that. It's actually pears, apples and everything else. So I think the department are doing a good job and doing it steadily and slowly. and it's not fast enough for us, but then it's like that with anything, it's like that with the COVID rollout, and with the small number of people who are trained, I think they're doing a pretty good job.
They've asked for volunteers on those, not emails. People going
Yeah,
off.
yeah, you gotta do 5 days straight, yeah.
Now we're going to go to the swamps.
Yeah, swarms are gonna be an issue with, yeah, if a swarm picks up, you know, Varroa. And they might say, yeah, all swarms are gonna be zapped. I don't know what position will be.
Bruce, is there an urgency at the moment for everybody to think of winter to check in, taking the results?
Well, if you do it on a sunny day, it's probably fine.
Yeah, sunny on Sunday.
Sun and no rain.
Yeah.
We don't get those
Yeah,
days
yeah,
anymore.
yeah. Like, they wanna know how far has it spread, that's the thing. If they found it in other 5 places in the country, I think they just say it's endemic. We're gonna register pest strips, everyone can use pest strips. That's a whole new teaching game. Now, there's a lot of resistance to that caused by certain mites. So the ones here, they're testing, how susceptible are the different chemicals that are available, and then they recommend the one that they're most susceptible to, I'd imagine. But you'd have more than one probably. That's going to be a whole new teaching thing. I'm not going to go into that tonight. So it's still early days. Your hives aren't going to be dead overnight if you get Varroa. It's going to take a while, but if the numbers build up big enough, it's going to be a constant big issue.
What sort of numbers can you actually get in the hive?
I haven't read
One
that
for every
anywhere.
bee, or?
No, it wouldn't be that much. No, it'd be dead before that. Yeah, no, I haven't read that.
Who wants to ask the last question?
Two hands up already.
Well, you decide which one.
Well, both those.
What does the sprinkle do to the honey and you can't eat it once you
No. It's registered that it's safe, but it mainly gets in the wax, not in the honey. But traces can be found in honey that are not lethal to humans. So it's safe for humans to eat, provided it's used in accordance with the requirements. But if it's misused, that can be an issue. The same with any chemical. But most chemicals get in the wax, not in the honey. And that's the problem, because it's in the wax, and the mites walk over the wax, the bees, they can become resistant. And some of the chemicals are strips, the bees walk on them, they're systemic, so the chemical gets into the bee's body, doesn't kill the bee, then when the bee sucks on, the mite sucks on the bee, the mite drops off dead. So the chemical's in the bee itself as they walk over it, under the fumic type compound.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, we know
Lucky guy.
Varroa's in every country, honey producing country in the world. Do you know of any country that successfully stopped Varroa getting in at least for a certain amount of time before eventually they lost the battle? Have there been any successful programs following the same sort of methods that the DPI tried to employ here?
Like New Zealand had things really tied up, and you just got to think outside the square. This is a really, really good example. Got all the plans in place, but there's vineyards in New Zealand, and where they had a barrier around and quarantine area, but there was no restrictions on the movement of grapes, because the processing places weren't, where the vineyards were. So people went in and harvested the grapes, put them on the trucks, they were open, and anyone that's got grapes in their backyard has seen grapes, they'll split sometimes on the weather, and that's, sugary substance that bees love. You can get a honey flow, or not a honey flow, it's more honeydew because it doesn't come from nectaries. But mudgy sometimes, if a wet season, the grapes all split, you can put your bees there and they'll fill up. But it's not really honey because it doesn't come from nectaries, it's plants, right? But the bees still live well. So what happened was in New Zealand, the vineyards were in one area, it was a quarantine area, no bees could be moved, nothing could happen. But the trucks could. So they put the grapes on trucks, they were open, and the bees were on the grapes with the Varroa on them, and when the truck moved off, they were on the trucks where they put the grapes on the open trucks. And when you move, bees don't tend to fly off. By moving needle, they'll stop on because of the wind. So they drove those trucks to wherever the processing place was. The truck stopped, the bees got off, and then they come in contact with other bees. Like drones are the big problem, right? Drones spread Varroa, quicker than anything else because they go into any hive. They go out, drone congregation area, they're buggered out all day, didn't meet a virgin queen. The first hive they see, they go in, and they're accepted. They've got to buy them. That gets into the hive. And so these bees that were shifted right out of the quarantine area come in contact with other bees and they now break there. Never thought shifting grapes would be an issue.
Would it be worth putting queen excluders on to stop the drones from coming in?
Oh, yeah, you could do that. You could put queen excluders on. But you're not going to get them the feral hives. It's still going to get the feral hives. Like,
That makes sense.
the spread in Newcastle hasn't been caused by beekeepers. It's been caused by bees drifting and coming into contact with other bees. So the feral hives are going to be as infested as the managed hives. Right? And that's what's happened.
But really the secret's to find where it started.
Last
Well,
question. Come on.
fairly
The last
but
question.
it's
The
not gonna-
last
It's not
question
going to prove.
is the lady in green. It is the last
Yes or
question.
no? Does this affect the natives?
No, there's no effect on native bees. It's specific to Apis mellifera, and they get on Apis cerana, we don't have here. They get on giant honeybee, Apis dorsata, and Apis florea, we don't have here. Well, not we know of, we didn't think we had Varroa either. So it's specific to honeybees. There's no impact on native bees at all.
Thank you.
So,
Not a bad resource, Bruce, to be a member up of our
should be
club.
retired.
Yeah. You did 16 years ago.
Give him a door prize.
There you go. He won some. He won some.
I want some.
All right.
Yeah, so hopefully that gives you the picture. Yeah.
It's a start of information. It just there's more and more and more of it. So just keep watching, listening to the, or reading the DPI and ABA reports that come out, and just see how it goes. We've got a field day on the 31st of this month. I won't be here, but if the weather's good, Emmanuel is hoping to possibly do a sugar shake or something on
Yep.
one of the hives if it's sunny.
It does, doesn't it?
Sugar shake. We can do that.
I might come.
It is scheduled to be hive maintenance as well. That's what we're doing on the field day on the Sunday, 10 o'clock here. The next two meetings, so the Thursday night and the Sunday field day, will be aimed at swarm prevention. So the theory of it on the Thursday, and then whatever practical efforts we can do to look at swarm prevention. And that was already on our schedule, but swarm prevention will be a very important thing with Varroa now. So that's what we've got coming up. If anyone's got any major questions, you can just email me through the newsletter, and I can start a list of things, and I will get it on to people who might be able to come up with the answers. But there's a lot more to know about the Varroa or go on it. So thank you all for coming tonight. And be safe. And check your bees. If you do check your bees, let's try and let the DPI know the results, positive or negative.